What if the reason you keep forgetting where you put your keys had less to do with your brain and more to do with what is living in your gut? It sounds like a strange question. Your gut digests food. Your brain remembers things. Two completely separate jobs in two completely separate organs, connected by nothing more than a very long tube. Except that is not actually true, and scientists have spent the last 20 years slowly proving it wrong. Almost everyone knows the feeling of standing in a room having completely forgotten why you walked in. It happens to healthy 20-year-olds, and it happens far more often as people get older. Around the world, tens of millions of people are already living with serious cognitive decline, and that number climbs every single year as populations get older. So people go looking for anything that might slow it down. Crossword puzzles, brain training apps, fish oil pills. A whole industry has grown up around the promise of protecting your memory before it starts slipping. But one of the more unexpected contenders on that list is not a puzzle or a pill full of vitamins. It is bacteria. Live bacteria on purpose, swallowed by the billions. This idea is a lot older than the yogurt aisle at your local supermarket suggests. More than a century ago, a Russian scientist named Eli Mechnikov, who had already won a Nobel Prize for his work on the immune system, became fascinated by rural villages in Bulgaria where people seemed to live unusually long lives. He noticed those villagers drank enormous quantities of soured milk, and he proposed a theory. Certain bacteria in that milk were crowding out other microbes he blamed for slowly poisoning the body from the inside as people aged. His science was shaky by modern standards, but the idea stuck. It planted the seed for an industry that now sells everything from yogurt drinks to high-dose capsules, built entirely on the promise of a healthier gut. For most of the 20th century, that promise stayed focused on digestion. Fewer stomach aches, better bathroom habits. Nothing more dramatic than that. Then researchers started noticing something odd while studying an entirely different organ. Here is a fact that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it. Roughly 90% of the body's serotonin, the chemical most associated with mood and mental clarity, is not made in the brain at all. It is made in the gut. The lining of your intestines is packed with hundreds of millions of neurons, so many that scientists sometimes call it the second brain. It can sense, react, and send signals upward without waiting for instructions from the one in your skull. And it is not just sitting there quietly. The trillions of bacteria living in your intestines produce their own chemical messengers, some of the very same neurotransmitters your brain uses to think, focus, and regulate mood. All of that traffic runs through a single physical cable called the vagus nerve, a direct line running from the gut straight up into the brainstem. Cut that connection in an animal, and gut bacteria stop being able to influence behavior at all. Leave it intact, and the influence runs both directions, every single day, mostly below the level you could ever notice. So here is a question worth sitting with for a second. What happens if you could deliberately change which bacteria are doing the talking between your gut and your brain? That question has quietly turned into one of the more active corners of medical research over the past 15 years. Small trials started popping up almost everywhere. Some tested probiotics in older adults with early memory complaints. Others tested them in people already diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. A few even tested them in healthy young adults with nothing wrong at all. The results were all over the place. Some trials found real improvements. Others found nothing. A few found the opposite of what researchers expected. Part of the problem was that no two trials looked alike. Different bacterial strains, different doses, different tests measuring completely different slices of cognitive function. Comparing them directly was a bit like comparing exam scores from tests written in different languages. For years, that made it almost impossible to answer a simple question. Taken together, across every trial ever run, do probiotics actually do anything measurable to the human brain or not? That is exactly the gap a team of researchers set out to close by pulling every trial they could find into one single, rigorous analysis. Before we get to what they actually found, it is worth remembering how we even got here. Probiotics were never really designed with the brain in mind. They started as a folk remedy for digestion, built almost by accident into a global business, and only decades later did anyone seriously ask whether the same bacteria might be doing something to memory, focus, and thinking. Which raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if an entire industry built around gut health has been sitting on a much bigger effect, one nobody bothered to properly measure until now? The gut microbiome itself only became a serious field of study in the last 20 years. Before that, the trillions of microbes living inside every human body were treated mostly as background noise, not something worth mapping in detail. Large scientific projects eventually set out to catalog exactly which species live in a healthy human gut, and how dramatically that mix can shift with age, diet, illness, and stress. That mapping effort is part of why probiotics research on the brain even became possible. You cannot study whether changing the gut microbiome affects cognition until you know what a normal microbiome even looks like. Skepticism has followed this field every step of the way, and for good reason. Wellness marketing loves a vague word like gut health, attached to almost any product, backed by almost no real evidence. Serious researchers have had to work hard to separate genuine biological signal from marketing noise, one small trial at a time, for well over a decade. So when a new analysis finally arrives claiming to be the largest of its kind, the honest response is not excitement. It is a healthy dose of caution, and a close look at exactly how it was done. A team of researchers led by Nancy Calzada-Gonzales and Joshua Barboza set out to do exactly that. Their work was published in the journal BMC, Complementary Medicine and Therapies. They began by screening every trial they could find in 4 major medical databases, going all the way back to when each database began. That initial search returned 2,182 separate studies. After removing duplicates and filtering out anything that did not actually test probiotics against a placebo in a real randomized trial, they were left with 34 studies that met every criterion. Combined, those 34 trials covered 2,390 adults, tested across capsules, sachets, and liquid formulations, using well-known bacterial families like Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium, alone or mixed together. It became the largest analysis ever assembled on the specific question of probiotics and cognitive function. So what actually happened when researchers finally pooled 34 separate trials together, covering thousands of real people, instead of looking at any single study in isolation? The clearest signal showed up on a test called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, a widely used screening tool for catching early cognitive decline. After 12 weeks of taking probiotics, scores rose by about 1 full point compared to people taking a placebo. On a separate categorical fluency test, which measures how many words someone can generate from memory in a fixed amount of time, probiotic users pulled ahead by almost 4 points. But another common screening tool, the Mini-Mental State Examination, told a very different story after only 8 weeks. At that earlier time point, probiotics made essentially no measurable difference at all. Timing, it turns out, mattered enormously. The improvements only became visible once people had been taking probiotics consistently for a full 12 weeks, suggesting whatever is happening inside the gut builds up slowly rather than kicking in right away. The effect was not evenly spread across everyone tested, either. In healthy adults with no cognitive complaints at all, probiotics produced no measurable benefit whatsoever. The real benefit showed up almost entirely in older adults, and in people already living with mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease, the exact populations where a gut already out of balance may have the most room left to improve. None of this proves that probiotics can prevent or treat dementia. That is a much bigger claim than this evidence can support, and the researchers themselves were careful never to make it. Using a formal framework called GRADE, they rated the certainty behind almost every single finding as low or very low. Not because the results were fake, but because the underlying trials were still too small, too varied, and too inconsistent in method to be fully trusted yet. Different trials used different bacterial strains at wildly different doses, measured with different cognitive tests, on populations ranging from healthy adults to people with advanced Alzheimer's disease. All of that variation makes it much harder to draw one single, confident conclusion. There is also a plausible biological story behind the numbers, even if it is not fully proven. Researchers suspect probiotics may calm chronic inflammation in the brain, strengthen the gut's own barrier, and boost production of chemical messengers tied to memory and language. A gut already thrown out of balance by aging or disease may simply have more room left for that kind of intervention to matter, which would help explain why healthy adults saw nothing while impaired adults saw a real signal. On safety, at least, the news was reassuring. Across 4 trials that specifically tracked side effects in 325 participants, probiotics showed no meaningful increase in adverse events compared to placebo. Other research has flagged rare, serious risks in people with severely weakened immune systems, but nothing like that turned up as a pattern across these particular trials. The researchers behind this analysis are refreshingly upfront that their own work is a starting point, not a final verdict. They are calling for larger, longer, and far more standardized trials before probiotics could ever be recommended as a genuine tool against cognitive decline. So the next time you reach for a bottle of probiotic capsules hoping for a little extra digestive comfort, there is now real, if still uncertain, evidence that the effect might not stop at your stomach at all. This video was based on the study Efficacy and Safety of Probiotic Supplements on Cognitive Function, a systematic review and meta-analysis of randomized clinical trials, led by Nancy Calzada-Gonzales, Joshua Barboza and colleagues, published in BMC Complementary Medicine and Therapies in 2025.